Imagine walking into a bar on a rainy Friday night where the clinking of glasses, the low hum of country music, and the chatter of strangers blends into the atmosphere like smoke that never leaves the ceiling. Now, imagine that same bar suddenly going silent, and not because a fight broke out, not because someone pulled a weapon, but because a woman with everything of beauty, money, and raw power decided to rip open the shirt of a man who looked like he had nothing left except scars and silence. And in that moment, when the ink of the Marine Corps Eagle, Globe, and Anchor glared across his chest, the entire place froze. Soldiers, bikers, strangers, everyone went still, because the story behind that tattoo carried more weight than any fortune, any fame, and any barroom pride. And dear viewers, if you stay with me until the end, I promise you this moment comes full circle in a way that will break your heart and heal it all at once. Daniel Hayes was a single dad and a Marine veteran. Life had hit him harder than enemy fire ever could. The battlefield had taken his brothers in arms, but the cruel battlefield of civilian life had taken something more personal: his wife, who had passed away unexpectedly, leaving him to raise their little girl, Emily, on his own. Daniel had spent years trying to balance work, grief, and fatherhood, never complaining, never breaking down where anyone could see. He carried himself like Marines do, straight-backed, disciplined, and respectful, even when the world didn't return the courtesy. But inside, every night when he tucked Emily into bed, he felt the ache of loneliness and the weight of promises he still made to his late wife. "I'll raise her strong, I'll raise her right. I won't let her feel alone." The bar he stepped into that night wasn't just a place to grab a beer. It was one of those small-town watering holes where locals gathered, where rumors spread, and where outsiders were tested the moment they crossed the threshold. Daniel wasn't a regular, but he knew how to blend in. Just a man in worn jeans, a plain shirt, and boots that had seen better days. He sat quietly in the corner, ordered a beer, and simply listened. He wasn't there to pick a fight or strike up conversation. For him, it was the rare night when his neighbor babysat Emily, and he could step away from being dad and just a broken bar exist. That's when she walked in. Victoria Steele. To some, she was a legend. To others, a rumor wrapped in leather, a billionaire heiress who had turned her back on high society parties and corporate ballrooms to ride with bikers, race down highways, and live life on her own terms. She was the kind of woman who made men nervous and women either admire her or despise her. She owned a motorcycle empire, her face occasionally flashing on magazine covers, yet she carried herself like she belonged nowhere except on the open road. When she pushed open the door that night, the bar seemed to shift. Heads turned, voices lowered. Her leather jacket was soaked from the rain, her boots left a trail of mud, and her eyes scanned the room like she was searching for someone worth her time. Daniel didn't even notice her at first. He kept his gaze low, sipping his beer, trying not to exist too loudly. But Victoria noticed him. Perhaps it was the way he sat with that rigid Marine posture. Perhaps it was the scars peeking out from his forearms, or the quiet sadness in his eyes that no money or fame could ever buy or erase. Whatever it was, she walked past every other man who had been staring at her like she was a prize to be won, and she stopped directly at Daniel's table. "You don't look like you belong here," she said, her voice smooth but edged with challenge. Daniel lifted his eyes slowly, met her gaze, and replied calmly, "Neither do you." That answer made a few men nearby snicker, expecting trouble. Victoria didn't laugh. Instead, she slid into the seat across from him without asking. "What's your name?" "Daniel," he said simply, not offering more. "Marine?" she asked, tilting her head, studying him like she already knew. He gave a short nod. "Once," she smirked. "Once a Marine, always a Marine. Isn't that how it goes?" That caught him slightly off guard, hearing those words from her lips. He studied her now, realizing she wasn't just some rich woman pretending to be tough. She knew things, or at least, she respected them enough to repeat them correctly. But just as Daniel thought the conversation would end, one of the local bikers swaggered over. Big guy, tattoos snaking up his neck, his eyes fixed on Victoria like she was property. "Vic, what are you doing wasting your time on this quiet boy? He doesn't even look like he can hold his liquor. let alone hold you." The crowd chuckled. Daniel stayed silent. He wasn't there to prove himself. He wasn't there to play games. But Victoria, a broken bar, she leaned back, smirked at the man, then suddenly reached across the table, grabbed Daniel by the collar, and with one swift, shocking move, ripped his shirt open. The sound of tearing fabric cut through the laughter like a blade. Gasps echoed. Silence followed, and there it was, the bold, dark ink of the Marine Corps emblem stretched across Daniel's chest. Eagle, globe, anchor. Not just a tattoo, but a declaration carved into his skin. A story of sacrifice, blood, brotherhood, and survival. Every veteran in the bar froze. Every civilian who understood even a fraction of that symbol's weight stopped breathing. The biker who had mocked him stepped back, suddenly stripped of arrogance. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't shout. He didn't even reach to cover himself. He just sat there, staring at Victoria with steady eyes, as if daring her to explain what she had just done. And she whispered softly, almost like a confession, "I knew it." The bar remained frozen, caught between shock and reverence. That single act, reckless as it was, had pulled Daniel's story into the open. People who had dismissed him a moment ago now looked at him differently, with respect, even guilt for laughing at him. But Daniel didn't care about their stares. He cared about the fire in Victoria's eyes, at the way she looked at him like she had been searching for him all her life, without even knowing it. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Viewers, remember this moment, because what begins as a ripped shirt in a smoky bar will lead to revelations, heartbreak, and a love story that neither of them saw coming. And by the time we return here, when that tattoo is seen again, the silence in the room won't be from shock but from tears. So stay with me, because this story is only just beginning. The bar stayed silent long after Victoria ripped Daniel's shirt open. But silence can only last so long in a place where pride and whiskey ran hotter than reason. One man's jaw clenched, another raised his glass in a quiet salute, and then the whispers started. A Marine tattoo carried weight up. It meant battles fought and survived, promises made and broken, losses endured that the average man at that bar couldn't imagine. For Daniel, it wasn't a badge to be shown off. It was a grave marker carved into his skin, one that reminded him of the brothers who hadn't come home. Victoria, however, looked at it like she'd just uncovered treasure. She wasn't smiling in arrogance anymore. Her eyes were softer, her voice quieter. "I knew it," she repeated, and this time it wasn't to humiliate him or shock the crowd up. It was personal. Daniel finally spoke, his voice calm but edged with steel. "You had no right." She didn't flinch. "Maybe not, but I don't make a habit of ignoring what my instincts tell me. And they told me you're not just another man trying to disappear into a bar stool." The biker who had mocked him earlier sneered, trying to regain ground. "So what if he's a Marine? That doesn't mean he's better than the rest of us." But even he didn't sound convinced anymore. His voice cracked against the weight of the room. Veterans in the corner straightened up, giving Daniel a nod of respect. Older men lowered their gazes, as if ashamed of their earlier laughter. The bartender quietly set a fresh beer in front of Daniel, on the house. Daniel could have left right then, walked away, and let the moment dissolve. But something in Victoria's stare anchored him. He had seen plenty of people look at his tattoo before, some with respect, some with curiosity, some with pity. But she looked at it like she understood something about him, like she had been waiting to find proof of what she already believed. And so, instead of walking away, he leaned forward and asked quietly, "Why did you do that?" Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Because men lie. Tattoos don't." "That ink tells me more about you than any words you could have said tonight." The bar stirred again, but Daniel barely noticed. He was locked into a silent battle with this woman who had invaded his space and torn open his armor, literally and figuratively. Finally, he shook his head and stood. "Enjoy your game, lady. I've got a daughter waiting at home." And with that, he turned and left. The crowd parted like the sea, no one daring to stop him. His shirt hung open, his chest bare to the cold rain as he stepped outside. He thought that was the end of Ida, that this strange, reckless encounter would be just another memory filed away in the long list of things he never explained to Emily. But fate has a way of tying knots where strings cross. And that night was only the first knot, because when Daniel walked out, Victoria followed. She caught up to him in the parking lot, her boots splashing in puddles, her hair damp from the rain. "Wait," she called out. "I'm sorry." He stopped but didn't turn around. "You don't strike me as the apologizing type." "I'm not," she admitted, breathless. "But I know what I saw in there. I know what it means, and I don't want this to be the last time I see you." Now he